Yo, what's up, y'all? Welcome to another episode of Prison to Promise, where we uplift voices and stories from the front lines of justice, reentry, and transformation. I'm your host, Dr. Craig Waleed. Today, I'm honored to be joined by someone whose work and life journey are nothing short of extraordinary. That's the good sister, Dr. Clover Perez. She's pretty dope, y'all. She's the founder and CEO of A Beautiful Heart, which is an organization dedicated to empowering justice impacted women and breaking the cycle of incarceration. Dr. Perez has turned her personal pain into purposeful advocacy, using her own experiences to shape a mission rooted in healing, education, and systemic change. That's pretty dope. In our conversation, me and Dr. Perez explore the turning points in her life, the impact of A Beautiful Heart, and what it takes to challenge stigma and rewrite the narrative of formerly incarcerated women. So get ready for a powerful, enlightening, and deeply human conversation with a woman who embodies resilience, leadership, and hope for the future. You don't want to miss this conversation. Now let's go.
Definitely.
So, yo, thanks so much for joining me here on this platform. I really appreciate your time.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. So, it's reciprocal. And as you know, on this podcast, my aim is to collect stories for the hopes of inspiring other people who are going through similar situations, be that of family members or people who are directly impacted.
Hmm.
And so with this, Dr. Perez, I'd like to ask you just to jump right in and maybe share a bit about your personal journey and maybe a bit where you come from. And I understand you have a non-for-profit, a beautiful heart, and maybe you could talk a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. And blessings to you and love. And I love what you're doing. So I just want to start there. And yeah, about my journey. So in 2012, I found myself really on a journey not of my choosing, which is which was, I should say, Danbury Correction Facility, after being sentenced to 121 months in prison, 10 years and 1 month. But through the grace of God, I did not have to, serve that entire 10 years in 1 month. We know how prison is, and there's a lot of things that can happen. People can lose their good time, catch another charge, whatever, plethora of different things can happen. So God hand was on me even through those dark moments. And so I was able to actually rise from that. And, you know, in that dark place, something greater was unfolding in my life. So while I was incarcerated, I just felt a calling on my life to do ministry. I didn't quite understand what that meant, right? Because when I think of ministry, I'm thinking, a preacher, having a church, and I struggled with that. And so, not because I didn't want to or my love for God, but I was going through so many things prior to my incarceration. My son was murdered. And so I had to deal with that while I was, in prison. And I was so angry that my emotions were so raw. And so I struggled with God. I struggled. I said, this is not what I want to do. It's not going to happen. But, um, when I think about it now, I say, oh God, look at on Jeremiah 29:11, for I know the thoughts I have for you, thought of peace and not of evil, for a hope and a future.
Mhm.
So that just played out in my life. And that replaced the clarity replaced my struggle. And once that happened, I realized that I was in prison for two reasons. Number one, for the crime that I committed, and also that's where my ministry was supposed to be born. And so it did. And in a place of captivity, ABHM came to fruition, and it took off from there. And as soon as I came home in 2019, I hit the road running.
Wow. Wow. And, thanks for sharing that. And thanks for sharing some of your pain and some of your loss. I'm
Right.
feeling that, just as a parent. Um, Also, what stands out to me is just the metaphor of you finding light in the darkest space in your life. In the darkest space, new growth began to happen. But that's just like what happens in life. It's like our bodies or our beings come to uh I don't know, we come into being in the darkness of our mother's womb. You know, Everything that grows from the earth, it grows out of the darkness of the darkest
Right.
soil, and here you were in this dark period in your life, struggling, but then you found beauty, you found a connection with God, you found a new purpose. So that is very inspirational, and I hope that people that hear this will understand that through the darkest times comes the brightest day. They just got to see the light in the dark.
Absolutely, absolutely. I agree with that. And it's funny that you said, through darkness when a seed is planted in the ground, it's in darkness before it grows and it sprout, because that's the same thing that I was thinking, and yeah, sometimes we find our purpose in dark moments, right? And so and it's not only for me, it's for so many others,
Yeah.
if we're open to the fact that greater things is in us and God is doing great and mighty things within us.
Mhm. Reminds me of a discussion I was listening to a couple of days ago, and it corresponds with other things that I've been hearing and talking with people about, which was basically, I heard a guy say, when I'm on the top of the mountain, um, that really doesn't say a whole lot about who I am because everybody's praising me. I got all the supports and whatnot. But it's when I'm at my lowest points. It's when I'm, carrying heavy loads. That's when we really can see the character of the person. That's when the true strength of the person comes out, or their weakness comes out when they're under heavy loads, and that's when we're really tried. And it makes me
Oh,
think about
absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with that. I totally agree with that.
And it makes me think about like the fire or the furnace or the kiln, they
Mhm.
put pottery in. It's through the purification of the fire, the heat. Once we go through it, we become stronger, we become better.
Yeah.
Sometimes people get damaged, but I think we become better overall.
Yeah, definitely. Damage if we allow it to damage us.
Mm,
We have to have a mind frame that we believe that greater is in us, right?
mhm,
And
mhm.
so it's things that we go through in life, we go through it for a reason.
Yeah,
I don't think that we just go through things just not to learn from it, right? I
right.
believe that life is like a classroom, and you take these different classes,
Yeah,
and some pass and some fail, right?
yeah,
And so if you fail it, you repeat it.
yeah,
But so it is your hope that you want to do the right thing so
yeah.
you pass it and so you don't
This
have
is
to
the
repeat it.
truth.
Yes,
Yeah. I
absolutely.
tell my kids sometimes, I say, it's just part of the curriculum,
Mm-hmm.
everything that happens in life, these trials, these errors, it's just part
Yeah,
of the curriculum of life. So,
absolutely.
speaking about, just these going through dark times and whatnot, what do you think are some of the biggest challenges for formerly incarcerated women when returning back to the community?
Well, barriers really. There's a lot of barriers to reincarceration. I think there's what is it, 40,000 barriers. And so yeah, we deal with housing barriers, we deal with employment barriers and things like that. And I believe that when it comes to women, we are basically kind of under this veil of indivisibility, right? Because when we talk about incarceration, we try not to even think about women. We think mostly about men. And so programs that are geared for men are not the same for women, right?
Mhm.
And even when you go into prison, the first thing that they do, they strip you of your humanity, they strip
Mhm.
you of your femininity, they put you
Mhm.
into men's clothing instead of
Mhm.
the diets is for men and
Mhm.
not necessarily geared towards women.
Mhm.
So yeah, so there is a lot of challenges that we as women face when we come home. Many of us prior to our incarceration, during our incarceration, and after incarceration deals with trauma. And so we need to address those issues. We need to address the root causes of actually what led a person to
Mhm.
incarceration. Only then I believe that the recidivism rate will be down because unless we deal with the root cause of the issue, how are we going to make changes? It's impossible, right? So
True.
it's almost like we're putting people in prison but we're not addressing what caused them to be in prison.
That's a very valid piece you dropped there, especially on the end, the trauma, addressing trauma. And
Yeah.
many of us have been traumatized. Those of us who are in prison, we have high childhood adverse scores, what is it called? Childhood adverse experiences. Many of us have high scores. And then many of the women who we find in prison have been victimized by men and other males in their lives. So, yeah, it becomes tough. And then we think about how do we address the trauma and maybe smooth it out, for lack of a better term, in prison when prison itself is a very traumatic experience. Some of the things you highlighted, like having your humanity stripped, having your femininity challenged, and things of that nature. So it's hard to, I guess, find balance in an unbalanced place.
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so, what would you say, like, is the best way to then maybe challenge some of the stigmas that are facing currently and formerly incarcerated women?
Mm, that's a good question. So I believe that challenging the stigma start with changing the narrative,
Mhm.
right, surrounding justice impacted people, not just necessary women and girls, but justice impacted individual, period. So I believe that we need to amplify the stories of justice impacted women and girls because, as I said, we are not basically in the mainstream right now. It's still men, even though you hear a lot of women are being advocacy and speaking about issues, but still in all, men is in in the center.
Mhm.
So I
Mhm.
believe that public awareness campaign, fair share hiring policies, trauma informed
Mhm.
programs, to ensure that opportunities are available and folks can rebuild their life after incarceration. I also encourage the using a first person centered language instead of using these dehumanizing labels, right?
Mhm.
That can also make a person feel less than, and we know that we are more than our worst mistake. Every single person makes mistakes, and this is it becomes so hard for me to comprehend why the system is so like this. Why do we believe that some people um, are deserving of a chance and others are not when we all make mistakes?
Yeah, yeah. And that's a great point to point out. And I personally, I think that what happens is that, as we know, the vast majority of people who are in prisons are Black and brown people. Many of us who are in prisons, we come from disadvantaged backgrounds or marginalized backgrounds. And I think that the history of our country has always discounted the humanity of Black and brown people. And then we've also placed value on people, no matter what color or background they come from, if they have or have not. So rich people tend to get, like all this praise and they tend to be valued, but people who don't have much material possessions are devalued. And I think it's those of us who find ourselves um, under the gun, so to speak. So we find ourselves in prison more often, criminalized, in mental health institutions more often, et cetera, et cetera.
Absolutely, absolutely. I echo that. The ones that never had really a fair chance
Hmm.
in the beginning. You know, we have April that's coming up as second chance month. But what about those that did not have a first chance, right?
Right.
Because of environmental reasons, you know, poverty, adverse trauma and things like that. What about those? They never had a first chance. So how do we skip to and go directly to second chances and overlook those first chances for others, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
It just not, does not make sense, and it just shows me um, how backward our thinking are, and right, and then we need to change that. We
Yeah.
need to change just in overall the narrative of how we look at people that have made a mistake, right? That's what it is. We made a mistake. And so and I also believe that there's classes of mistakes,
Yeah.
it could be whether you ran a red light and and what's the punishment for that? You get a
Right.
ticket, you have to pay a fine, right? And that's a mistake, right? And someone commit a crime, that's a mistake too. And the severity of the crime may lead that person to incarceration, but once they come out of incarceration, they should be welcomed back into society with the understanding that, hey, we make mistakes as well, right? And
Yeah.
so why are we now going to strip that person of their rights, of their humanity because they make a mistake? And
Yeah.
that's what we need to look at incarceration more so as a mistake and not as a definition of who we are
Yeah.
as people.
Yeah, because once a person is incarcerated, it's like we have like collateral consequences for the rest of our lives. You know,
Mhm.
something as you mentioned when we first talked, like a couple thousand impediments or barriers to successful reentry. But I also think you said the way that we perceive people who are incarcerated is backwards, and I think it's so backwards that I call it bass ackwards. You know, it's
Mm.
so backwards. And then the other piece you talked about is, the importance of second chances. If somebody's incarcerated, yeah, I agree. Incarceration in and of itself should be the punishment, not all the extra collateral punishments that come with it, and so people should be given a second chance. But you pointed out some people have never even had a first chance. And so
Right,
when we
right.
think about like prisons and jails and they talk about rehabilitation, many of the people have not yet been properly prepared to participate in life. So they have not yet been habilitated to begin with. So how do we take our prisons and our jails and turn them into therapeutic environments where people can get the right type of treatment, the right type of attention? So yeah, when they return back to their communities, their families, they're in a much better place physiologically, psychologically, emotionally, as well as maybe even professionally.
Absolutely, I agree with you. Absolutely. Prison is it's not about rehabilitation. You know, their way of rehabilitating a person is by dehumanizing them. That's the only way, that's the language that they speak, and the treatment that we receive. So you have to just basically be strong, be a strong person,
Yeah.
right? Know who you are. And even with dealing with these women and girls, I try to instill in them value, to let them understand that you are valued, you are more than your worst mistake. It does not matter what anyone think about you, okay? Don't let a person's opinion of you define you for the rest of your life, right? You have to find yourself, right? And know who you are and place value on yourself. You cannot expect someone to place value on you if you don't place value on yourself, because once you do, there's a lot of things that you will not accept, right? And so I, instill that in, the participant that comes to ABHM, to let them know that, you are more than your first, your either last, all the mistakes that you have, or you may have done, you are more than all of them together.
Mhm. Absolutely. And so ABHM, we didn't talk a whole lot about it, but can you speak about the purpose of ABHM and how that is in alignment with your ministry, your call to ministry?
Right. So ABHM mission is to provide reentry services for justice impacted women and girls and gender fluid individuals. And we operate from a five-prong approach, alternative to incarceration, advocacy, education, empowerment, and wellness. And what we believe is that within the first 36 hours when someone come home, it's very critical to reach out to that person, because at that point we know what the person need. We can have a conversation. We also believe that we don't believe in the one size fits all solution. We believe, so we tailor our program to the individual needs. And so, if someone comes to us, right, I cannot expect them to be like me, or there may be areas that they're lacking in, and there's areas that I'm not lacking in. And so we draw from those things, and we make sure that we provide those services to these individuals and customize them, and I would say this, I am so proud of the work that we do at ABHM. And I think that it's more so because we operate from a heart of empathy, a heart of love, and a heart of compassion. We understand that, people make mistakes, and we are not in a position to judge anyone. And because we do that, and we show these clients that they are more, as again, I cannot continue say that even more, that they're more than their worst mistake. We have served over 5,000 women and girls, right? And I will tell you this, we are so blessed that not one of our participants went back to prison.
Wow, that's amazing. And it's like you were reading my mind because I was thinking to myself, what is
Mhm.
your success rate? You know,
Yes,
that's
yes.
wonderful.
Yeah, so and I think that my experience in general, not only shape ABHM, it defines ABHM. I went into a system that itself was broken, right? And I came across women like myself, that was broken. And I
Mm,
realized how important it is to build us up, understand that we belong to God, and He's the potter, we're the clay. And so
mm,
there's nothing that's too hard for Him. So
mm.
I understood that, and I just extend that to all the women that I serve, whether they believe in God or not, is just to impart love, and to show them, that we are here to help them in whatever areas that they need.
Yeah, dig it. That's really heavy. And so, thinking about your work that you do, what what type of advice, I guess, would you give to another woman or a person, period, but particularly women, because we're talking from a woman's perspective on this carceral system. But like, what kind of advice would you give to someone who's currently incarcerated that's seeking to transform their lives? Like, what kind of things would you suggest?
Wow, that's a great question. So I believe that prison for me was like a truth serum,
Mm,
right? So it allows me the opportunity to really find myself
hmm
and to do a thorough introspection of who I am, look at myself, and find out what led to my incarceration. And so I believe for every woman that are incarcerated, that would be the first step, because you need to address what led you to prison, right? And once you really are truthful with yourself, right? You can lie to anyone else, but you need to be honest with yourself and
Yeah.
say, okay, what led to me? What did I do wrong? Could I have done this differently, right? And okay, I made the mistake. I'm here. Now, okay, I'm not going to stay in this with this pity party. I'm going to move forward. What can I do to move forward? I also encourage people to have mentors, right? Good mentors. You don't want to just align yourself to people that you may think that okay is doing good, but on the other end you see them doing other things that's bad. You want someone that you can actually emulate, right? And say, okay, well, this person I know without a shadow of doubt is doing some great things. Let me be around that person. Let me draw something from this person. Let that person be a springboard of support for me, And once we accept that and own our mistakes, right? And work past the mistakes, right? And said, okay, and accountability is another important thing. It's
Mhm.
very important for you to accept responsibility for what you did. And once you move past this, I think that you're in a good place to open up yourself for transformation, right? For redemption, and also, to go out into society and show them the best version of who you are.
Yo, I'm smiling and I'm filled with goosebumps just as you finish because it sounds like we shared the same page of the same playbook when it comes to transforming one's life.
Yeah.
Because as you talked, I was going back to my own experience in 1990 when I was standing in the reception cell in Elmira prison, um, really confronting myself, stripping myself, and going through the various layers of my life, asking myself, how did I get here? What happened in my life that made me think in a way that I committed these crimes and brought myself to prison? And I had to be honest with myself. And as you said that, Bob Marley's words began to ring in my head. He has a song
Mhm.
called Running Away. And in
Right,
the song, he
right.
says, you could run and run and run away, but you can't run away from yourself. You know,
Yeah,
you could tell
yeah.
everybody anything. But then another piece that you drop, the importance of accountability, you know, being accountable to yourself, but also being accountable to others. And those others are, people who mentor you, people who mean important things to you in your life, that community that you can create, So what I'm getting from that is the importance of also having access to people who can show you different avenues of how to live this life, who can also provide you different opportunities to expand your life. And one last thing before I give it back to you is it makes me think of one of my experiences when I came home. A friend of mine said, "Hey man, you have to learn to borrow other people's integrity, which means you form relationships with people who have sway in the community, people who are on the pro-social side of things. And when you start to begin having positive outcomes in your lives, they can then speak for you to help advance whatever your cause is by saying, hey, this is my friend Clover, this is my friend Craig, this is my friend Scram Jones. And yeah, they made some mistakes, but please give them a look. Please give them an opportunity. And I know that's what worked for me, and that's what continues to work for me.
Awesome. Yeah. That's awesome. Definitely. I like that. I like
Mhm.
that. Yeah. I
Yeah,
like that a lot. Yes, definitely.
it's dope.
Yeah. Good
That's-
recommendation. Good recommendation.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yes.
Well, what they say, iron sharpens iron, right?
Iron sharpen irons. You're right about
Right.
that.
So it's the
Yes.
complement of. So tell me this, and not just me, but anyone who's listening to this or who will hear this, how can people get involved with your work and how can people support your mission? How can they reach you, etc.?
Yeah. So we always love to have people join us, whether through volunteer or whatever, ambassadors and things like that. You can go up on our website, which is a beautifulheartministry.org. There's forms there that you can click and fill out. There's different programs that you can look through and see basically what fits you, right? And so we want people that's coming on with, that have the same passion and the same mind frame towards folks that have been incarcerated. We don't want anyone that is coming on to judge. We don't want anyone that's coming on that's going to use these dehumanizing labels towards the people that we serve. Definitely do not want that. But we always encourage people to get involved, right? To get involved. That's how you know what's going on in your community. That's how you know what's going on in your country, right? Prior to my incarceration, I would say that I felt like I was so sheltered. And that's why prison was really a shell shock to me because, my introduction of really prisons was basically what I saw through media, right? And so when I went in, I thought I was going to be in this orange jumpsuit. I thought they was going to shave my head. I thought I was going to be sprayed down, right? And it made people believe that folks that go to prison are dangerous, right? But man, when I went, I found there was some woman there that was so loving, so
Yeah.
kind,
Yeah.
people that did not have to be there.
Yeah.
And so through the work that we do and you come in, that is when you will learn about who goes to prison. You will find that there's grandmother that goes to prison. You will find out that your daughters go to prisons, uncles, niece, nephew. You will find that there is just such a wide variety of people that does not usually are shown, right? You
Right.
don't necessarily see grandmothers in prison, but they're there, right? You don't see young kids in prison, but they're there, right? And so how you can be a part of that is, as I said, just go on the website, or you can stop by the office. The address is there. We're always open, we'll show you around. You'll meet some of the participants that we serve. Many of them are there doing some type of programs, or they're just there just to help out, just to pay it forward, for
Yeah.
all that we've done for them. So yeah, that's a big way that you can get in. And of course, we on all social media platforms, so you can look us up there as well.
Right on. And your organization is located in the five boroughs?
Well, we're in Queens, which is one of the
Okay.
five bars, yes.
Okay, right on. That's
Hmm.
what else did I want to say to you? There was so much you're saying, and it's so fruitful, and it's got my mind firing on all pistons. But you know what? One of the things I did think about as you're talking about who you find in prison, and I think about, earlier you were talking about how prison is mostly this focus on men, and prisons were originally designed for men. But we know, like in the last few decades, women have been one of the fastest growing groups
Yeah,
coming to prison, and there's unique needs. There's very similar needs, but there's unique needs. But it also makes me think about, many men, when they're removed from their family, when they're removed from the community, it disrupts the community, it disrupts the household. But when you remove a woman from the community or from the household, it can destroy the community. It can destroy the household. It can bring it down. And so I think that it's so important for us to start doing things that if we have to incarcerate people, particularly our women folk, that they need to have, again, and I said this earlier, there needs to be more of a therapeutic approach that can help people
right, right.
be
Absolutely.
better.
Absolutely. And to piggyback on what you just said, not only does it disrupt the family and destroy the household, but it also destroy the community itself. Think about, you're taking money out of your community and sending it to another community, and that's money that you could have used in your community to provide programs, whatever that may be,
Right.
to build up the community. But now you're extracting that and you're sending it to folks in prison, and really to build up the prison system, because we already know that their commissary is crazy, and and one of the things I tell you that I said I was in awe, because while I was there I saw so many people that especially the FCI that was there for counterfeit. And I'm like, they were there for selling counterfeit sneakers, pocketbooks, and things like that. And those same things that they charge these people for, they're selling these counterfeit sneakers on commissary. And
Right.
I'm like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
This is really crazy. How do you wrap your head around something like that? And we buying it because we need it, right? And but they charge these individuals for selling those things. It doesn't make sense.
It's
None
bass
of it makes
backwards.
sense. Yeah, yes.
Yeah. It's all bass backwards. Yeah. The same
Yep.
behaviors are criminalized when one person does it and the other person does it, and there's very little, if no consequences at all.
Yes, yes.
And so we're coming up on our last couple minutes together. Um, but I wanted to ask you to speak about anything that you may have wanted to talk about that I didn't lead to or open the door or ask about. Is there anything there?
Yeah. So, in addition to our C3, ABHM just received its C4. So what we're moving into right now is to do legislative work, right? We want to work on policies that remove barriers, for justice impacted individuals. We're also working on trying to bring more focus on you know, um, trauma and mental health for folks not only that are out, but also folks that are in. I believe that it's important that if someone goes to prison and they were seeing a therapist before they go to prison, they should continue those in prison as well. We're working on a piece also that I want to say too much about it, but I will just say a little bit to provide phones for folks that they can reach out to mental health on the outside, right? Of course, those are folks that will be the chosen of the institution that they're in, and just like attorney monitored phone calls, the calls will not be monitored as well, and so people can address and the issues that they're dealing with, because so often we see that so many people commit suicide, right? Because they don't want to talk about the issues that they're facing while they're incarcerated because of fear of going to suicide watch and things like that. So we want to make sure that we provide those resources for folks that are in prison, and also allow them to get the support that they need when they come home.
Yeah, yeah, very important. Thanks for sharing that. And finally, I want to ask you to think about your journey from whatever starting point to where you are right now. What phraseology or title, verbiage would you use to capture your journey, say in a catchphrase or a title?
Mm, yeah. Well, I can say that offhand. I may not have liked the journey, but I love the destination
Watch
where I'm
out
at
there
right
now.
now. Yes,
You
yes.
may
May
not
not
have
have liked
liked
the
the
journey,
journey.
but I love the destination where I'm at right now. I feel grounded, centered, anchored by the hands of God. I feel
Mhm.
like I didn't know what my purpose was. And I remember when my son was killed, and I just was on my knees and I was asking God, why did you take my son? Why did you take my son? And I just heard that little still voice says, I took one so you can help save others. And the others is the work that I do right now. And of course, no one wants to hear that. And I'm like, you took my son so I can save others. Who are the others? Who? And so the others were the work that I do right now, saving, just using my voice to raise awareness of what's going on, within our communities, within this country, the bringing more awareness to justice impacted individuals, right? And how we need to humanize them, right? We need to remove these stigma, and we need to treat them as they are, human beings, right? And also allow room for mistakes, right? Allow room for mistakes. Once we allow room for mistakes, then we understand that people make mistakes, and we cannot continue to use that one mistake excuse me, and weaponize them for the rest of their lives. We cannot do that. We are not in positions to do that, right? And so with that understanding, I think that we can, move to change the needle of where it's at right now, and to bring more awareness and to say, well, you know what, instead of me just warehousing my people in prison, let's find resources for them. Let's find what they need, and give them those things. And I believe that all of us should be on the same playing field, right? Give people the opportunities. It shouldn't be opportunities given to one set of people and then opportunities is not, because the ones that the opportunities are withheld, they're the ones that's scrambling, right? They're the ones like us, the Black and brown people, we're
Yeah,
the ones that are incarcerated, and we're really feeling the heat of that, and it's time to change the trajectory of that. It's time to understand that a person should not be treated indifferent because of their skin color, right? It's not, it's what counts in the heart. And if I'm nice to you and I treat you respect, I treat you with dignity, give that to me. It's not something that I have to earn. It's my birthright,
that's right.
right? My humanity is my birthright. And then you're trying to take something away from me. You're not in that position to do something like that. But, so it's about changing narrative, changing people's mindset. And I just pray that one day we'll get it right.
Dr. Clover Perez, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your insights
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me and continue to do this great work. Oftentimes, these podcasts are the only way someone can share their stories, and dismantle all what's said about them, the negativities and things like that, and this allow people to probably gain back their voice, and so I appreciate this. Thank you so much.
Right on. Thank you so much. And I wish you a great rest of your day, rest of your week.
You too. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Peace.
If you or someone you know would like to be a guest on the Prison to Promise podcast, please contact me at drcraigwaleed@gmail.com. I'll spell it out for you. That's DrCraigWaleed, D as in David, at gmail.com. That's drcraigwaleed@gmail.com. I look forward to hearing from you, and thanks for hanging out with us here on the Prison to Promise podcast. Peace.